All right, we are live. Oh, I don't like how that banner sits on my head. Let's move stuff around. I don't like that either. All right, that's fine. My banner's on my head. I just won't sit up tall. Hello, everybody. Bill is here. Gordy is here. Thank you guys for taking time. Busy time, especially for Gordy as he's learning. Show me that thing again.
Oh yeah, my super
yeah.
Cockpit. Yeah.
Is that Airbus?
37.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. And Phil's in his old man.
He's in his den.
I'm actually my father-in-law's house because my internet. I live kind of out in the woods, and my Starlink has been a little spotty with the tree canopy being full at end of summer.
Right on. Yeah, we just got fiber here. It's been pretty amazing. John Bloor in the comments. Sorry for the banner being on your head. Yeah, I know. This is the first time I've had this many people on. I didn't really think about it. I could probably move stuff around, but I don't have. I'd have to do it now, and everybody would see how it's all being done. So I'll just duck down low. A little bit of preamble here before we get too far started. I do not have Jake with me tonight. People in the comment section, so I'm going to leave the comments section up so that I can see it, which sucks because I am drawn to it like a moth to the flame, and I will read all of your comments. So try to be cool. What's that? Can you pull it up? I don't think so. You can do it up there of comments. Yeah, on the right.
There we go.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, but I warn you to don't do it because you will just. It's like going on a first date to a sports bar and they got TVs everywhere and you're just like that, the girl's not impressed. So I will have the comments up, but I guess what I'm saying to you people who are watching, if you have a comment or a question and you 100% need it to be seen, you definitely got to super chat it because I will not be able to pick it out of the mess there. So when it super chats, it does all this weird stuff.
Sure.
So then I will know. But otherwise, we're going to get into it. Again, a big thank you to all the Patreon supporters and to the YouTube membership people, because I don't call you out enough because YouTube membership, the program kind of sucks because they don't really I don't even know when people sign up for it. I just happen to look and I'm like, oh, there's a member. So thank you guys for doing that. And of course, you can always buy merch. The link is down below. Anyway, we're going to get into it. I've got two guests, as you can see, and this is the first time we've done it, hence the banners on my head, because I just didn't think that far ahead to practice. And of course, these two jokers showed up literally at the last minute, I was getting nervous. I knew Gordy said it's going to be one late. You did say, but I was still like, oh God, what do I do? If no one shows up? Because for all I know, there was some sort of time dilation going on that I just wasn't playing, yeah, it's fine. We're all here. So what we're going to do, Gordy's quality is low. That's because he's in a hotel because he's out learning. So don't judge him too harshly on his camera.
Much more it's okay.
Yeah, I look much better in low def.
And you got your nice mustache going. Well, we're gonna get into it, and again, like I told you two before, we'll go ahead and just kind of do quick introductions, and that way people listening can kind of associate voices with faces. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of noise. So Phil, take it away. Tell us about Phil Hickson.
Yeah, so I met Gordy first, I guess. My first flying job out of flight school was at the 82nd with 117 Cav, and I got to Alpha Troop and got the chance to be a platoon leader there for a couple of years. And with that, Brian was my boss for a year and a half, running around Afghanistan, yelling at me to put my hat on, and all those good things. And then stuck around with the 82nd for another deployment. There I was assistant S3 for a little while, so sitting in the talk, drinking coffee. And then I also got to be a headquarters troop commander. And that was really the end of my flying days, so about 5 years there at Bragg. After that, I did a little stint with force design at Leavenworth, kind of helping manage aviation unit design. And then got out and spent a couple of years in the Guard, where I was mostly a brigade aviation officer for a field artillery brigade. So kind of cool, a couple of different non-flying jobs, but they were still very related to aviation. And now I fly keyboard for VMware. I do a program management gig with VMware. So
it's
very exciting now.
Very.
You got out of the reserve?
I did. Yeah, I did a couple of years in the Guard, and then decided that was enough, and I didn't really want to go spend a year in Kuwait for the Guard. So.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And I'm kind of checking the comments because there was a question about volume. So I've messed with Gordy's volume. So hopefully it's loud. So comment section, let me know. Gordy, I don't want you to feel self-conscious about it. I can hear you fine.
I'm low.
I can always. I don't think it's you. I think it's the internet's. Sure. I went in there and boosted your thing. So Gordy, take it away. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So I also did my first aviation deployment, just like Phil and Brian in 117 Cav. I did a few years as an infantryman before that, and then went to flight school and flew Kiowas for quite a while. Did a couple of deployments out of Bragg, PCS'd up to Fort Lewis. Did one of those career rotations with them when we finally put the Kiowa to bed. And during the ARI, when the Kiowas went away, I was lucky enough to get a fixed wing transition, and honestly, that was probably one of the best things that happened, just because it really hit the reset button for me career wise, where you kind of get to that point where you're about to promote yourself out of a flying job, and yeah, it hit perfect. And so I did a stint at one of the regional flight centers flying VIP for a little bit, and then spent the last while doing the ISR thing. I did another Korea trip, and then you can't really list off the fixed wing deployments just from the way we deploy. It's two dudes in a plane for 2 weeks somewhere and then back and rinse and repeat. And retired a year or so ago, and I took a corporate flying job, which was a great experience. But I finally sold out, and I'm flying for Alaska now. And I don't have a mustache. It's okay. So you saw me, Brian, but I had the big. When I was flying corporate, I had the big grizzled beard. And so I hadn't shaved in, a year and a half. And when I did shave, it eviscerated my face so bad that I still have I'm just raw skin burn, still trying to heal from my shaving for Indoc a week ago.
It's like the shadow or something. It makes it look like you have a mustache. It's incredible.
Yeah, maybe it's just the overhead lighting in my giant schnoz.
Yeah. It's a turret overhang.
Yeah, take the warrant out of the orange, but you can't take the mustache off the warrant, as they say.
Yeah, I know. Phil, I do like that you're rocking the Bam Bam shirt, though. I think credits out to that the illustrator of that beautiful logo.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's right. So Gordy is the designer of that beautiful logo, which I have text proof that you allowed me to use without any return. So
did you ever do the trivia fact of what the Kiowa logo? What's the inspiration for the mouth? Everyone always goes shark teeth. Everyone's always shark teeth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on block leave during TK, I'm at my parents' house, and my room has not been updated probably since about the 7th grade. Do you know what the inspiration was?
Ninja Turtles.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah, the Ninja Turtles.
I think that's why I love that symbol. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm gonna add it. I think I can add it on here. That's what I love about it, because you're right. It's not the standard oh, I'm a shark, or oh, I'm a warthog or something. It's completely out of left field. So yeah, it looks really good. How long did that take you to make? Because you went home on leave and just
I did it while we were on block leave, and then I think I ordered the sweatshirts. I don't know. I think the shirts all got there about 2 weeks after we got back. So I don't know. Who knows? I have a bunch of the rough drafters that I'll have to shoot your way, because maybe that'll be fun to show sometime.
Yeah, I can't find it in my files, and I'll screw it up if I keep digging. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think most people who are familiar with my channel at least have seen the logo. But yeah, totally cool. And then of course it had Bam Bam, because we were Bam Bam, which I love that call sign. It was better. What was it before I got there? It was Accelerator or something like that.
I don't remember. I remember when we had the vote.
I remember the vote. Yeah, I don't think we had anything, because we did the vote down in Kandahar before we went up.
I can't remember what some of the other finalists were, though, but I do remember going through the big list of everything that you could choose. And I remember Girth was on, and I was like, wow, that would be a fantastic call sign. My brain was going, and I was going crazy with the patch ideas.
I remember, it was like a draft night, and everybody sat around and just voted in this tiered kind of pool. And
I'm pretty sure it tied, and I think Becky had the deciding vote.
I don't remember how it ended. I remember the other two that were close were Cartel and Juicy.
Oh, Juicy. Yeah, do you remember that?
I remember you guys talking about Juicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Calling in his Juicy right before you start shooting.
That's right. Juicy would have been good. No, I think you guys, I want to say when I got up there, you when you'd first got there for like a week or two, it was like Accelerator, and then it had got changed. But I could be misremembering. If for people who don't know what we're talking about, so we're talking about the air tasking order call sign. So the unit that we were in, which I've got the flag here, the guide on was Roughnecks. So that was the troop's name. But when you go overseas, you have the air tasking order, and that is like the call sign that everyone in theater knows you by. It's on this huge document that comes out daily, and it says who's doing what and this and that and the other, and where they're at. And so there's a list of names that you can pull out. And I'm guessing you guys looked for Roughneck and it was used or wasn't there. I don't know. Or maybe you guys just said, screw it, we're gonna do something different.
I think it's too long.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so they looked through and they found a list of all the names, and then you could kind of pick. You could put in like a list, because I remember doing it on another deployment. You basically just put in like your wish list to, whoever Centaf or whoever manages that shit, and then they come down and say, okay, your name is Girth, which would have been interesting. Yeah, I can only imagine what you would have come up with.
Yeah.
Can only imagine. But Bam Bam was cool. I thought that was a neat call sign.
Remember that Aussie? I think it was perfect because it was curt and concise. Yeah. But when you heard it on the radio, there's not a chance that it would get confused with anything else that's ever said on the radio. You know what I mean? Yeah, 100%. And remember that Aussie who would say it? He'd go Bam Bam. There was like that, like you would finish the transmission and then you'd say something back and he'd just go Bam Bam. Yeah, that was one of the greatest things about that deployment, is got to work with all, the Aussies and the Kiwis and even the Dutch to some extent. But the Anzac guys treated us pretty well. Yeah. Yeah. We, there was some good dudes. I mean, hell, I still talk to like one or two of the guys, Aussies, that I met on that deployment. One of them actually followed this channel, and I mentioned Frank Bonacotti, and he was like, wait a minute. And he like sent me a message, and he's like, are you talking about, like, I just said Frank. It was for Franksgiving, right? Which Christy started doing for Frank after he died. And this guy messaged me, and he's like, hey, are you talking about Frank Bonacotti? And so he sent me pictures and stuff. And I don't know if you guys remember Beef. Yeah. Do you remember that name? Yeah. So he's like, yeah, they knew me as Beef. And so the next thing I do, I send him a picture, because I had always told Frank, hey, give me a hat. I want a hat. Because I was like, get me something from the dudes, because he was always over there. I think Gordy used to say he was hard for soft. Like he was just always hanging out with them. Soft gets Frank hard. Yeah. So he's always over there. And I'm like, hey, I want a hat. And so sure enough, he gets a hat from Beef. And so it says Beef on the inside of the hat. So I sent him a picture, and I was like, is this your hat? So I think he's in the chat. Actually, there's Beef, Dave. Yep, he's there. What's up, man? So that was an interesting deployment. And then Phil talking about my hat kink, I guess you could say. I could never. The chow hall was like right across the gravel parking lot. The promenade. Yeah, the promenade from our choose, and I'd like to try to slip into the chow hall without putting my hat on, because that was a lot of work. And God, I don't know how many times you yelled at me about that. I don't know why it bothered me so much. We were walking around and like just whatever. There was no one around. Like I think I was like the highest ranking dude there, and I didn't give a shit. Like people were walking around with what you're wearing right now. In a war zone. Oh, we can't have that. But if you were in full uniform and not wearing your hat, I don't know why, but that just like, no, I can't do it. Company commanders switch, Yeah. Well, everyone's got to have their thing that they're like hung up on. But
Anyway,
he had 30 people that were expected to walk around looking like idiots. You were the two that were supposed to be his bastions of light in the darkness.
Yeah, I don't know if I was that light.
Yeah, so Phil and Rich were both the platoon leaders. That's a good point, Gordy. That's probably what it was. Well, but I yelled at all of you, but I guess it hurt more when I saw Phil. It just, yeah, it was a deeper cut. No, 100%. But those hoodies, I mean, I still have mine. I still wear my hoodie too. Those were awesome. I wish I could get hoodies now that they're that good quality, because those things are old as shit.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 13 years old and they still look good. Like, they're not coming apart.
Yeah, I don't have any of it anymore. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I had all my t-shirts and everything cut up and turned into a quilt for one of the girls.
Cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It just, although I suppose it's mainly because none of the t-shirts fit anymore, but yeah, that's a story for another day.
We don't want to talk about that. You're preparing for your airline job, where you just get just a little bit bigger. Yeah, I actually bought a suit this past week because I'm getting ready to interview hopefully soon. Yeah, it's like I could probably fit in the suit that I wore back in 2014. No, I can't. What happened? Do you guys still work out? Like, do you try to like keep somewhat fit, or is it just like, yeah, fuck it?
I don't know. Phil's looking super trim and slim. I don't know.
Phil,
if just on that, yeah.
Phil, do you have cancer? Because you look thin as shit. Yeah. Like you're dying. Like, you're thin. I'm just kidding. You don't look like you're dying, but you are thin. I mean, when you turn on the camera, I was like, God damn, like looking good. Like you didn't age a day.
A little more gray maybe in there, but yeah. No, I still try to, keep moving a little bit, because honestly, like when COVID started and I was like working from home and sitting on the couch all the time, like there was a little stretch there. I was kind of like, oh man, started falling apart.
Yeah. Gordy, what about you?
No, honestly, like I'd love to, but if especially when I was on that, the corporate job, I would either out be flying or in dad mode. And I know it's no excuse, but I just let dad life kind of get the best of me.
Yeah, it's easy to do. There was a time here recently where finally I was like, I got to start doing something. So I've tried to make time, especially on trips. It is hard. I think it's harder at home than when I'm on a trip. Because at least it's like when I'm in the hotel, that's it. It's just me in the hotel. Like I have no excuses. Go make yourself do something. Because I mean, and you've seen it in the job, and of course you'll see it going forward. Like, you fly with these dudes, they're huge, and it's like, how I can't do anything for you if we crash and I gotta push your ass through that little window. Like that's your escape. Like you're not fitting, bro, and I'm not waiting for you. There's no way I can pop your ass out of there.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. It's something you got to do. And I think sitting like that for the hours that we do, you got to do something to stay limber and keep the blood flowing, if nothing else. But it is easy to hurt yourself. I ran a couple of days ago and I think I tore something because I can walk, but it hurts to walk. And I was telling my wife, it's like, it's probably okay. And she's like, you're not 28 anymore. Like you're gonna have to wait like weeks, to let it heal. I was like, nah, probably like 3 days, I'll be fine. But well, let's see. Chat says Phil looks about 27. I would agree with that.
It's just because he's sitting so far away.
Yeah,
it's because yeah. But he's in the old man cave. That's what ages him by like 50 years as well.
Many leather-bound books.
You look very important. Doesn't smell like mahogany. I did want to. We're going to cover a couple subjects. We're going to be all over the place, chat. If you haven't figured that out, I would say that the Roughnecks, aka Bam Bam, were pretty close. Like we had a pretty good vibe. And so we joked around a lot, and the three of us haven't talked like this in 13 years. I mean, honestly, it's been a really long time.
Yeah, we've talked. I don't think I've seen you talk to Phil and probably since we left Fort Bragg.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. So I would love to do, and that's kind of why, like we were talking before we started live, was the That's kind of the reason I brought the show back, because I wanted to do stuff like this. Like, fuck it, I'm not gonna chase down like who's the dude who flew this, whatever. Like, if that happens, it happens. I just want to like talk to my bros and just have a good time. So it is going to be a little bit all over the place, but there were a couple of things that I want to talk about. I know I gave you guys homework. Gordy was super excited about it. But I'm sure he did it because I asked him to, and he's a good soldier, which it's so funny to me. What rank were you retired as a W4?
Yeah.
Okay. And your last job
just blows my mind.
Not only your mind. Okay. I'm just gonna, there are people who are like, wait, he was a what? Because you were like a fucking brigade 4 too, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, things were a little different in fixed wing. You could stay down flying longer, which is one of the things I was talking about before. But yeah, it's just, you know, it's weird to you blink and you're like, wait, I'm the responsible one now. How did that happen?
Yeah, when did I become a grown up? But it's because I mean you were a Woj back in the day. But it's so funny. Like I was talking to somebody who knew you from back then, but didn't know anything about you since. And I was like, yeah, he's like the brigade. He's like the CWAB or whatever. And they were like, what? That guy? It's like, yeah, he grew up. It's fine. Let's see. What did I have on deck here? Let me share this. Oh, this one just brings a tear to my eye. And I'm interested to see what you guys think about it. Let me find this. All right. Army questioned for using helicopters to simulate hurricane winds during a division run. Let me find the right
video.
Yeah, I've got it here. We'll watch it here in a second. But 7th Infantry Division coming under scrutiny for taking division formation run too far after they reportedly had H-64 Echo gunships hover overhead to provide heavy and damaging winds. Yeah, here's the video. Hopefully the sound. Okay. I don't know if is that playing properly? No, that opened up another window. Hang on. What the hell? I don't want to watch again on Instagram. I want to watch it right here, just like we rehearsed. Oh my God. Hold on. All right, is that playing? All right.
Terrifying. That's it. That's all there is. Try running up and down Long Street with artillery going off in your ear, and then come talk about bad division runs. That seems fine. Like whoever this anonymous warrants, given the dirt, just needs to grow up. Like, come on, man.
I forgot all about that. The cannons. Oh, we're gonna have to circle back to that. Well, what this immediately reminded me of was, do you guys remember coming back from Afghanistan and we went on a brigade run and they had the Black Hawk following us taking pictures, and then we did that big formation and there was the Black Hawk was circling us and the fucking camera bag or something fell out.
Yes,
I know Phil remembers that.
Yeah.
And it landed on somebody's car.
Ooh.
And like I think it was gosh, we know who it was. Now I can't think of who it was, but it landed on their car and like broke their windshield or some shit. And that's the first thing I thought of when I saw this, because they were talking about it actually damaged like people's cars and shit like that.
Yeah, whoever wrote that, I don't think has actually been in a hurricane, because those trees were violently shaking. I don't know. Like I did appreciate that the article also had several quotes from all the like lower enlisted guys basically being like, fuck yeah, it was awesome. Like, I don't know what everybody's upset about.
It's a tiny heart syndrome. That's all it is.
That's a good Morganism. I haven't heard that in a long time. I'm pretty sure that was his thing. Yeah, I've kind of mixed feelings on it. On one hand, yeah, it's not a huge deal. Exactly. It's not hurricane winds. If they'd had Chinook sitting out there, it would have been very ugly. That being said, it is just kind of silly. Like, what are you getting out of it? Like, I would be pretty pissed off of my car if I came back and my car actually was damaged because we wanted to have like this dog and pony bullshit. But it does seem like a lot to do about nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that Captain Harris would have approved, and obviously Lieutenant Colonel Harris sees it from a different light. You know,
I approved a lot of stupid shit.
I'm well aware.
I also didn't know about a lot of stupid shit till it was after the fact, and you guys didn't tell me, but I would have approved it anyway. But I appreciate the plausible deniability that you provided me. So thank you for that. Let's see, what else?
I don't even know what I can say anymore now with that little disclaimer.
What's that?
Well, I mean, none of us are
so we're okay.
Ooh.
Wait, say that again?
I said I don't even, like, with that disclaimer, I don't even remember like what you knew and didn't know. So I'm treading on.
Well, I remember being pissed off at you guys because you never told me about the cave.
Oh, the glory hole?
The rocket hole, the rocket cave, whatever. I don't remember what you guys called it.
It was the glory hole. I'm pretty sure Slim found it, didn't he? Like way up north.
The glory hole.
Yeah, it was the glory hole.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you upset? Says the guy who landed to steal a gun, landed his helicopter to steal a gun from a dude, is gonna get upset at me for doing
allegedly.
Allegedly,
I did not land. No, I was mad because you guys didn't let me in on the fun. I would have absolutely shot rockets into this hole. So what was it, like a cave or some shit on the side of a mountain, and you guys would practice?
Yeah, it was
legal.
It was tough. It was just tough to get him to go in because of, the profile that you usually shoot rockets in. You're never going running fire, like straight and level. Yeah. But if you could get a perfect bullseye, bats would come out.
Yeah. It was this massive concussion. It would come back out of the cave, and then bats would go everywhere. I mean, and it had to be high. I don't remember, because it was a good deal further north. Even that, like you had to go up past Cobra, if I remember. It was up there a ways. So I mean, you were probably at what, 8,000 feet?
Yeah, probably 8,000 MSL, and then it was a sheer cliff, and so it was right towards the top. I think there's footage of it in the Bambia video that I did.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, I think that's when I learned about it. Was watching that video. I was like, "What is this cave? What the hell is this?" Yeah. There was that. There was something about a river crossing. I don't remember exact details. I don't know if we want to go down that road, but there was something about a river that you told me about right as we walked into a party, Gordy.
Oh, well, that's what I was wondering before this started is, what's the statute of limitations on all of that stuff? Like, I'm retired.
Yeah, we should probably stop where we're at. We'll just say that there was a thing that I wish I'd have known about. I would have been fine with it, but it is what it is. Those were probably the craziest things. But, well, you guys reminded me of the bat thing. Do you remember the Birdman up by Cobra?
Oh, yeah.
The guy that jumped off the cliff?
That was me and Phil.
Yeah, and I think Jake was with us.
Oh, was it? It was Jake there. Okay, all right, cool. So tell that story, because I was thinking about that the other day, and it was so funny.
So Firebase Cobra had been, every time we'd go get gas, they'd be taking indirect fire, and they basically put out a standing order like, hey, anybody looking down into the valley in our base with binoculars, whatever, like, it's a shoot first and then call with BDA. Don't call for clearance of fires sort of situation. And we were leaving, and Phil and I are like, oh shit, there he is, standing about 6 feet tall and wrapped up in a blanket, two of them. Yeah. And I think we called up, we called Jag up and said like, hey, we got him dead to rights. We're inbound. And the dude like got up, ran over the edge of the cliff and jumped. We thought we scared his ass to death. And then he opened his wings. It was, do you remember the name?
It was like, I'm going to mispronounce it, but it was like Lammergeier or something otherwise.
Yeah, Lammergeier. A bird of prey. They live usually in the Kush and up in the Himalayas. They usually only live above 10,000 feet, but they're like 5 to 6 feet tall with like 10-foot wingspan, like big cock diesel birds of prey. And I swear to God, to this day, it was dudes just like normal guys that would be up in the hills. They would have blankets on, just sitting there looking like rocks. And oh my God.
Well, the worst part was we go up there and like he jumps and we're like, oh my God, a bird. Okay. And then Jag comes back on the radio like, hey, what's up with those spotters? And I remember we had a little conversation between the
oh yeah, we got them. They're dead. Bye.
How do we tell him that we were chasing birds? And then I remember Jake goes, that damn bird had shoulders, man.
Yeah.
I remember you guys telling me about it like after the fact, and the story was like, maybe I'm misremembering, but like that Jake was doing like a play-by-play over the radio and be like, okay, yeah, he's heading, he's standing there. Oh, wait, he's walking to the wait, he just jumped. He's like,
it looked like the
and they said didn't he fall like 100 feet or something before the wings went out, so you just like plummeted and then
yeah, it looked like the bad guy eagle off like Froghorn Leghorn. It was like a bird with like biceps. Like
I swear, I thought we were in the land before.
Mighty eagle.
Yeah, I flew through its wash.
Yeah, seriously. You don't have a bird strike. That bird has a Kiowa strike. Like that's how big they're doing.
I never saw it. I remember you guys telling me about it, and from then on, anytime I went that far north, I was like looking because I was like, I gotta see one of these condors. I didn't know the name of it, but yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. That shit was absolutely wild. Because then we were joking like, how do you put up that spot report? I was like a dude with a brown jacket, yellow hat, yellow shoes. Oh my god. Anyway. All right. What was the other thing I wanted to get your takes on?
What is the Blackhawks and the Medal of Honor guy, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about the Medal of Honor, dude. So here's the dude, Larry Taylor, received the Medal of Honor. So this cat, like, was flying Cobras. They got called out to essentially a tick, and these dudes are getting surrounded. There's a LRP team of like 4 dudes who are just out in the woods. Like, and I watched a little bit about LRPs on YouTube, like just kind of researching this stuff. I mean, I knew what LRPs were, but I wanted to get like a little bit more in depth, and absolutely wild the stuff that we were asking dudes to do, going out in groups of 3 or 4, just like miles away from anyone. But so these guys are surrounded, and this guy, they take off flight of 2, and for like 45 minutes they're trading shots with the guys on the ground, the bad guys at night, right? This is before goggles, or like before goggles were mainstream. I think they had goggles back then, but they didn't necessarily fly with them. And just shooting the shit out of stuff for 45 minutes. The guys on the ground were marking themselves with freaking flares, and somebody decided, they were supposed to send Hueys in to pick these dudes up, and it basically was judged like this: the LZ is too hot. Like, these guys they're just fucked. Like, we're not gonna be able to get them. And Captain Larry, he was a lieutenant at the time, decides, nah, we're gonna land and pick these dudes up. Had never been done in combat before. Gordy, can you imagine a lieutenant getting a silver star at the time? Can you imagine like the way aviation is now, like Phil getting on the radio back then, be like, all right, boys, this is what's gonna happen. I'm gonna land and pick them up. Like, it's so different. Like, just thinking about like the way aviation was to the way it is now, like it's just so different, and so like night and day.
Yeah. Well, I think the couple takeaways from the story that I had, first of all, you left out the most important part of the backstory, and why I really think you brought this up. Just to clarify, he's an armor officer that went to Fort Knox, then decided that he could better serve the Army as an aviator. What else? Did he get shot in the arm and drives in the Suzu Rodeo? Like, you're just living vicariously through this guy.
Right. And we are both handsome. No, well, he was, I did see like an interview with him, and he talked about why, because he did one tour as a guy on the ground, and he was like, this sucks. And so that's why he went to flight school. But back then it was like so interchangeable because it wasn't a branch for the commission guys. So they would just go get like rated. Like, they would just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to flight school and get wings. And they may never touch an aircraft again, but it was almost like going to jump school. It's like, okay, you got.
Yeah, I wonder if it was easier because back in the day, FA owned the Apache, and then Signal owned the Kiowas, and so on and so forth. Like the individual MDSs before aviation was a branch. Oh,
I think I don't remember the dates. It's a good point. Sort of. So the Kiowa upgrade to the OH-58 Delta Kiowa, not the Warrior, was funded by artillery, if I remember correctly, is the way it worked. Because artillery was like, hey, we need some sort of like forward support asset that can laze. That it was really about the Copperhead, right? So the old Copperhead round, which is laser guided artillery. So like we need somebody that can laze for that, and we're not relying on dudes on the ground. And so they sort of footed the bill for that. And then the Kiowa Warrior came about in the late 80s, and by that time, aviation was a branch. But I'm not sure when the Apache came out versus when aviation became a branch, because I think the branch was like 83, 84, something like that.
I don't mean necessarily a specific like MDS. I'm saying like the reconnaissance aircraft, you know, belong to the Signal Corps, you know, as a holdover. That's why red over white, you know.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking too, like at the Cobra back then, it weighed a lot less than it does now. I think the max gross weight on that Cobra was like 9,000 pounds, roughly 9,500, where now they're max gross around 18 or 17, I think, something like that. But, and it said in the story, or I don't know if in the thing that I sent you guys, but things that I'd read, like they had like 25 minutes of gas left and they had a 20-minute flight home. That's unnerving. That's an unnerving feeling.
Yeah.
I remember, Phil, you might have been with Frank. We shot some dudes with Hellfires, and we were like way low on gas. I don't know if you were with. I know I had Jerry with me, and when we landed, like I was kicking off the AC, like the whole flight to Frontenac from where we were. It was like that area, like sort of due south of TK, but it was like halfway between TK and Frontenac, and it was nighttime. And we shot these dudes. And I mean, we were fuel, like literally, like I told Jerry, like we lined up and I was sitting in the left seat and we shot the missile. And I was like, go direct to Frontenac. I will laze as we're flying, because we were just like so low. And we landed, and I want to say we had like 20 pounds or something like that, which if I remember correctly, the book said like below 25, the fuel gauge is not reliable.
Yeah.
In the Kiowa, like I was so, yeah, just like get a high, like get in the approach. I remember that whole flight. Like there was one of those flights where like when you're in it, suddenly you're like, I made a really bad choice right now, and this is probably not going to end well for me. I can't remember who was with Frank. It might have been Ahmad. I can't remember, but yeah. So that's an unnerving feeling. And then to have 4 guys on the side, which, you know, from a weight standpoint, I guess at that point it's not too bad, because you've just dumped off like nothing but a shit ton of rockets and 7.62 grenades, I think, perhaps, because they might have had a grenade launcher on the nose, but still. Just wild. I thought it was an interesting story, and I'm glad that it got caught up, because I guess he got the Silver Star initially, and then it was finally upgraded to a Medal of Honor. What I always wonder about these things, though, too, is like, what about everybody else? Like, what was his front seater's role?
Right.
Like, was he like down? I'm sure he was.
I mean, probably, but that always, you know, it makes me wonder, because like you give these awards and then you get like one guy gets it and the other guy doesn't. The decision mattered, but that other guy had to land there and was getting shot at too, you know, like I hope he got taken care of out of all that.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I tried to look, you know, cursory glance. I was trying to figure out, like, did they have a name of the other crew member and what did he get? Because, yeah, I'm with you, because I've seen that happen where dudes will do something and it's like the right seater or the back seater gets an award and the other guy doesn't. I'm like, man, he was there too. Like he was all on board. Now, if he's up there kicking and screaming like, no, I don't want to go, I don't want to land. All right, got it. You get shit. But if you're like, yeah, let's fucking do it. I mean, he's on board, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind that he was throwing down rounds for you the whole hour prior, you know?
Yeah. I'm willing to bet that they all got probably a Silver Star. I'm willing to bet or something close. I'm sure the guy didn't get nothing. Let's see. Chat might know. See, chat, look it up. Figure out if that dude got a thing. Yeah, Ratliff. Let's find out, chat. Do some homework for me, because I could not find his name. I looked in a few different places. I just couldn't find anything, but I'm not very good at researching stuff. What was the other thing that I wanted to share with you guys?
It is always interesting to read those stories and just think about how different things are. Where, you know, they're like,
yeah.
Oh, I got shot down 5 times in the same day. And you're like, God damn! Like on the deployment after you left, we got into a big tick, And I came home with the damaged aircraft, and I called back, and I had the crew chiefs. I was like, "Start the spare. I'm going back." And they were like, "Fucking absolutely not." Like, it's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I saw that happen on my first tour in Iraq. Some dudes got shot down, and yeah, the same thing. They were trying to take an aircraft and go back out. But you're right. It was like a different vibe back then. Like, it was almost like expected, where now there's like, well, wait a minute, we have to debrief you, and we got to see all your video and shit like that.
Well, I mean, you were talking earlier about Hugh's book, right? I remember, it's been a long time since I read it, but I think he has some stories like that too. Like, I think 3 times in a day, getting knocked out and going back out. I'm like,
yeah, there's one dude in that story. There was one battle where this guy got shot down 3 times in the same place, like because I guess they had this big orbit or something, and like he just constantly getting shot down and getting flown back, and he'd get another bird and come out. But I mean, back then, I guess the aircraft, they weren't as expensive, right? They were kind of disposable almost, versus now. Even a 58 was really expensive. I mean, it was a couple $1 million, and it was there's not much to it.
Well, and too, you got to think like the supply chain of it. That like you didn't have Kiowas to replace down Kiowas. The Army is out.
Yeah.
By the time we were over there, so you're playing a shell game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 100% shell game. Yeah, because we used to deploy like 30 aircraft, but we'd only bring like 15 home, and then in the next deployment, you'd only take 15, and you'd do all this other stuff. It was like that too with the Apache. My last deployment, we gave all of our Apaches, we had Echo models, we gave them all to Fort Campbell, and then we deployed with no aircraft and fell in on these like Frankenstein Echo models they had. They were like sort of Echoes, but not completely Echoes. And they had been in theater for like 3 years. And I remember the first time I got in one, and I think I was sitting front seat, and I went to call tower. I could not even hear him respond because the engines were just like growling. They were just like, fucking, we want to die. Like, send us home. They were so loud. And I was like, say again, tower. And of course it was like this Iraqi dude or Kurdish dude, so you couldn't understand him anyway, and he was probably giving us the wrong instructions. But yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It's a bit of a shell game. What is chat? Also, Captain Taylor disregarded direct order. Yeah, I guess that's the other side too, is because they had sort of called off the mission. So, but imagine that, like, disregarded direct order these days, you're not getting a Medal of Honor. You're getting a Silver Star.
Those decisions, they go one of 2 ways. Like, you're either getting put in for award or having your PC orders pulled.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting time and a very interesting story. It's a shame that it takes so long for those awards to get kind of processed. I remember talking to shoot, I can't think of his name. The guy from We Were Soldiers, Bruce Crandall.
Yeah, the tall guy.
Yeah, he was the short guy, but there was the other guy. So in We Were Soldiers, the movie, he's played by shoot, I can't remember my fucking name anymore. Anyway, Bruce Crandall got the Medal of Honor. That's what's important. And he'd come to Benning for a funeral. And since I was like one of like 3 aviation guys at what used to be called Fort Benning, I was his escort officer. So like I got to hang out with him and stuff. But he was telling me about the guy Too Tall, who I think you're referring to, is the Greg Kinnear. That's the name. He got the Medal of Honor as well, but it took like 30 years for that to catch up. So I don't know why that is. I don't know why that takes so long for those things to happen. I don't know what drew the attention of anyone. Like, because again, he had a Silver Star. I'm just curious, like what the backstory is on that, how that stuff happens.
Yeah, I don't want to dig too deep, but I do know that you can put in for a Silver Star with expert employment of an ISLID. So,
oh, sick.
Not opening that can of worms.
No, I didn't want to open it. I just,
No, I forgot about that.
I haven't.
So gross. Is that before or after you over-torqued the aircraft in the FARP? It's probably after.
The chronology gets fuzzy.
Spilling all the tea.
Yeah, you didn't expertly come out of the FARP, but you definitely expertly used that laser thing. But yeah. Cool. All right, what was the other one? Oh yeah, so I'm interested, a little bit more serious tone. Let me scroll it up here. Army releases helicopter crash report, won't say cause. So this is the one that happened in Alabama a while back, where the aircraft just kind of like seemingly fell out of the sky. Do you remember this one?
I remember hearing about it.
Yeah. So basically, they landed somewhere, got gas near Huntsville. If I remember correctly, as far as the landing, they landed, got gas, they took back off. They were IMC, and then like the next thing that happened was that they were seen on radar descending rapidly. And there's some video. I think this is the one with like the ring cam footage, like from people's houses and stuff, and aircraft's like just like coming straight down. What's interesting?
I thought it said they were in there scud running, trying to stay out of the clouds.
I mean, they may have been. I think there's a part. I mean, it talks even here shortly after emerging below the clouds. Well, so it says they definitely went through a cloud. Were they flying in a cloud? I don't know.
Maybe just transitioning.
Yeah, they may be. Okay, during the descent, the helicopter flew in and out of clouds going from... Okay, so that's during the descent. That's the part I missed. Okay, so during the descent, they went through clouds and then unrecoverable flight, which the video... I don't think there's a video on this one, but it's like the... I mean, like there's no blades spinning. Like it's, they're just almost stationary.
Jeez.
But what's interesting, I guess, what's weird about the story is like that they're releasing it, but they won't release the cause. They concluded that the reviews board conclusion on the crash, the cause, and the reasons for that conclusion. Wait, hold on, that's the wrong sort of comment. Certain portions of the safety report are closely protected and exempt from disclosure. So basically, they're saying they know what caused it, but they're not saying. And I just thought that was really strange. I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what the conversation in aviation is, right? Because it's, I don't know. I always remember accident reports and stuff being very frank discussions. Like you could get details from Rucker, there were briefings, right? Because it's kind of like got to learn from it, which it's not the same thing as
right.
It's the public media. But
I mean, I'm assuming guys are getting like the behind the scenes, like, like because exactly like if there's something, if it's a material thing, guys are probably being briefed on it. If it's a crew thing, like pilot error, they're getting briefed on it. But I just seems strange to me that they wouldn't post that normally, unless the only thing I can think of is that it was some sort of material thing. That's what I just kind of went to immediately. It was like, okay, it's probably some sort of material thing and nobody wants to say that. I don't know if that's true or not.
You see, I almost think though that would have been something they would come out with, because it like you said, if it's a mechanical thing, it's an easy explanation,
Yeah.
Like the only thing I could see them have it like not come out is if it's almost some sort of like malicious intent, or maybe not malicious intent, but there was, some sort of like, human factors was involved that was kind of a black eye for the situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think most people that I talked to when it happened, our assumption was that it was some sort of crew, some sort of pilot error type thing, like maybe the spatial disorientation, and coupled with some sort of failure, right? Because even if you get spatially disoriented, the blades are just going to keep spinning. I mean, unless I guess you get into some weird attitude where it just breaks something. I don't know. It's just strange to see that. And I guess I'm more like, more conscious of these things. I had to do the investigation, or I was the 15-6 officer for the Black Hawk that crashed at Fort Polk back in 2019 when I was there as an OC. And there was material issues. And so whenever I see these things happen, I guess I keep more of an eye open to it, especially the Osprey right now. They're having a lot of problems with the Osprey with like some sort of clutch type spline thing that's failing, and that's causing drama. Even though we talked about actually in the last show, like the maintenance rate of the Osprey is actually better, like from a failure standpoint, is actually better than like F-18s and other aircraft in the Marine Corps, but you just always see the news about the Osprey. So anyway, I don't know. I was interested in what you guys had to say about it.
Is the Army still getting the baby osprey?
Yes, that is the plan. Though I think the last time I saw something about it, they were actually, I always get these confused because it was Bell that won. And then Boeing was like, no, that's not fair, which always happens. It's like for every contract thing. It's almost like it's part of the thing. Like even my company, we do government contracts, and we had just won this contract. It's like another 5-year renewal for something that we've been doing for years and years and years. And the other side was like, nope, that's not fair. And like, it just immediately goes into a remediation type thing. So I think that's fairly honest, but yeah, nothing's changed on that front. I don't believe. Hang on, I'm checking my notes.
They thought the Valor, right, is the name of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like they really are prizing the the range, the speed, that kind of thing over it. It makes me wonder like what the life cycle cost of that is though, because one, I don't know, the maintenance on the one with the tandem blades is probably pretty high too.
Right.
But I have to think the maintenance costs on a Valor are going to be pretty, grossly high compared to a Hawk. I don't know that for sure, but the interesting point I read somebody make a note of was its size. And unless they change the number of tails in a flight company, a lot of existing hangars aren't going to be big enough to hold these things because they just take up more space. And so there's kind of some interesting like life cycle costs, the additional infrastructure requirements and things like that, in addition to like per unit maintenance costs that I'm sure that I know they accounted for it or they factored that into the decision, but I'd really be curious to see what that came out as.
Are you sure they did that?
I mean, they should have done that, right? Yeah, and all that.
They did as well. Just like they did with the new PT test and all the equipment that you needed to do it. And everyone and their fucking brother said, hey, this is going to be really weird because we need to spend a lot of money. Oh, no, it's fine, you guys, it's fine. And then I think they just recently came out with like, well, we're going to get rid of that test because it turns out everybody needs all this shit and it's expensive and it's hard to carry with you overseas and all, all the things that we've all been fucking saying for the past, 5 years or what leading up to it. But that's true. I didn't think about that because at least with a Hawk, you can fold it up, put it in a hangar and protect it from the elements, which is really what you're talking about from a maintenance standpoint. And it's easier on the maintenance guys to work on the aircraft when they can put it in a hangar instead of leaving it out in the hot ass sun. You can't really fold up those Valors. But I think at the end of the day, what they're valuing, and we're seeing it play out right now in Ukraine, and we kind of even saw it there in Iraq with Iran like shooting missiles at Al-Assad. It's speed and range, and we saw this JRTC. We were kind of talking about it. You've got to push everything much further away, because of the long range precision fires and all that stuff that can now reach out and touch you that you can't. That you didn't have to worry about back in like, the 90s and things like that. So I think they are just sort of accepting that cost and saying, hey, screw it. We need the range. We need the distance. That's an interesting point. I think with the attack version that is being looked at, the future armed reconnaissance and attack aircraft will probably be one of those coaxial things, which just seems weird to me. I don't like them. It always makes me think of Russian stuff. And then when I think of Russian stuff, I don't think it's very good. I don't know.
Isn't the whole point of that though that you can put a pusher prop on the back, and that's how you get your airspeed because you're not sacrificing all the engine power to your tail rotor.
Yeah.
So you offset the torque, and then you put a pusher on the back to go faster.
Yes, and I think that there's some life cycle type. It's not as hard on the aircraft overall. It just seems super complicated to me. But again, I don't even change the oil in my car, so I'm not a good source of knowledge on the mechanical side of this stuff. But I don't know. For me, it's like it doesn't look like a normal helicopter, so I don't like it. That's kind of like my go-to. It's just purely aesthetics is what I decide on. But chat says it looks like that J.O. Ratliff got a bronze star for that flight. Okay. Well, he got something. Wait a minute.
Hey, Phil, didn't you get one of those for being alive on one of your deployments?
There was a time I did stay alive.
Things have changed for awards.
They made me think
I wonder, that's an interesting point because you can't get a Bronze Star for flying. I wonder if that was different back then.
Yeah,
I also saw like in Taylor's bio that like he got like 200 air medals. I mean, just the way they treated those was kind of a different concept.
Well, I think they did. Remember when that TK deployment started, the brigade commander's idea was to give an air medal for every engagement.
Yeah.
And we're like 3 weeks in, and we're like, hey, fucking, here you go. Here's another 638, and they're like, oh, let's pump the brakes on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the write-up, the way it's written in the regs now, and maybe it was different back then, was that an air medal is a Bronze Star. It's the exact same equivalency on the chart. Like if you look at a chart of Bronze Stars above it, but that's just because one has to be above the other. But the air medal is the equivalent of a Bronze Star. You can't get a Bronze Star for being at the controls of an aircraft. You can't get an air medal unless you were, because that was the whole thing with like UAV guys. They were talking about, well, can you give a UAV guy an air medal? And it was like, well, no, because they're not actually flying. It has to be in the aircraft. They can't just be managing an aircraft from far away. I'm
pretty sure that changed about a year or two ago, because now there's the little chiclets that go on it. So a service air medal will just be the blank award. There's still V for, there you can get a valorous one. Yeah. You get a C device if it's for, combat related things. And then there's an R for remote.
Okay.
Which is why I really, on one of my final Afghan trips, I was really lobbying hard to get one of the remote air medals when I was doing the fixed wing stuff, because I already have a Valor one, and I got the C one. So I was like, I wanted to bat for the cycle.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta go for the turkey. Man, these guys keep flying over. I don't know if it's coming across the audio, but I'm under the traffic pattern of Simmons, and so there's a constant stream of aircraft flying overhead. Yeah, the Bronze Star that Phil and I would get is for being good dudes. It was the Bronze Star for being a good dude. So it was not for valor. I do not put that on my license plate, though. I don't know if Phil does.
No, I prefer the large sticker on the back window.
With all your awards, overseas service.
Yeah.
I really don't want to be one of those guys, but license tags are stupid expensive in Washington State. So I'm thinking about pulling the trigger and finally getting I don't know what plate I'll get, but getting one of those award license plates.
Well, I had my S3 when I was a battalion XO at Hood. We're good friends, and he texted me one day, and he's like, "Do not judge me, but I'm getting an air medal license plate," because he was at the DMV at the time. And he's like, "I'm doing it because of all the benefits." Because he was like, "You get like free parking at the airport and shit like that." And so I was like, "That's okay, that's fine." In fact, I think I'm gonna, when I renew here in North Carolina, I'm gonna get a Purple Heart one, because there's some benefits, some parking benefits that come with that. I'm like, yeah, here, just give me that. You've got that too, don't you, Gordy? You got a Purple Heart.
Well, yeah. Well, I thought about it because you can park in the parking garage at SeaTac, and I don't have to deal with the shuttle lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I was looking at. For North Carolina, it's even better. I don't think that you even need a Purple Heart. You just have to be a disabled veteran, meaning you just get disability benefits and you can park at the airport for free. So, yeah, it's worth looking at. But then you got a Purple Heart when you were an infantry guy, didn't you?
Yeah.
Was that in the Battle of TK? Weren't you were at TK when like it was being taken over?
Yeah, I did. So I had another moment. I know that's one of your favorite stories, is when we're flying over TK, and I was like, wait a minute, I remember that. I remember this place. I had another 10 years later. I remember flying over it in the guardrail, way up high, and I was like, wait, I think that's Cobra. I would like what counting valleys over. Like, I think that must be TK. It's weird to have seen something, running down the streets versus flying down the streets versus flying up at Space 1000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just weird to have seen that over, almost all 20 years of it.
Yeah, I had that experience in my last deployment when I was in Iraq, because we flew out of Kurdistan, Erbil, and so it's kind of across the way from Mosul. So we would fly out to Mosul all the time, and the last time I'd been in Mosul was 2006 when I got shot, and so now it's 2018, and I was flying Apaches, and we would go out there, and I remember we were circling this cop or something in Mosul, which looked completely different because ISIS had come in and like everything just was like fucked. I mean, bridges were destroyed, everything was just chewed up. But I remember there was like this little hill of dirt out there in the city, which was kind of like right where I was when I got shot. And it would just be like with the guy I'm flying with. I was like, oh, you see that hill over there? Like, yeah, I got shot over there like 10 years ago or 12 years ago or whatever it was. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of go back and see how things change. I mean, it's never really any good, but I thought that was always interesting. Yeah, that you had been a ground guy and been there in Tarancalt, and then to go back later and fly out of there. But that's cool too, to go back and see that. I was thinking about September 11th, obviously, because it was yesterday, and where we were when that happened. I know Phil's a bit of a younger lad.
Phil was in third grade.
Yeah, Phil's in third grade. Were you in college at least?
No, I was in high school.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's
I
good.
didn't start college till 2002. So.
Well, let the men talk for a minute, and you just sit there and look pretty. Gordy, you were an infantry guy at the time.
I got to brag on Labor Day.
Okay.
So, yeah, like I'd been there for a week, 2 weeks, and I remember. So I was out Green Ramp. They were testing out the new C-130J, and all of the bigwigs from the 82nd and 18th Airborne Corps were out there, and they had just taken off with all those guys who were going to jump it, and the Lockheed guys or whoever comes running out, and they're like, "Oh, you boys ready to go to war?" And we thought they were just razzing us, and we're like, "Fuck yeah!" And they're like, "Well, good, because New York City just got bombed." And we're like, "Oh shit!" We went inside just in time to see the second plane hit. And I remember too, the news, the news reporter or anchor was saying like that Bush is on the phone with the commander of the 18th Airborne Corps, like talking about what we're going to do. And I was like, bullshit. I see him. He's right there. Like he's taking off. And so they, I don't remember what was the name of the like emergency drop zone by Corps. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the name, but yeah.
I don't know if they jumped there or if they probably still jumped at Sicily, but they just like, popped and bounced. And so I was on like, this is E1 or E2 at the time, Gordy. And I was on like bitch detail, shoot shakeout. And we got all of the parachutes back, but like we were missing like 3 or 4 of the H harnesses because all the big wigs just popped and, dipped. And they're like, well, you can't go home until you find them all. And I was like, well, okay. But yeah, it was crazy. My battalion was on DRF1 at the time too. 3505 was DRF1. So we went through the full 18-hour sequence and basically we're just waiting we knew we were going. We just didn't know where.
Yeah. Didn't you like go like pretty early on? I remember there was some story about like you guys landing in some airport in Kandahar or in Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, most of the people that deployed landed in an airport in Afghanistan.
I got it. All right. No, like something like the C-17s were like flying with like an airliner or pretending to be an airliner. Was that you that told me that story?
Yeah. That I wasn't on those 2 planes, but I think that's one of the coolest parts about it. There was this is from, I could be mistaken in some parts, but yeah, there was the Jordanian flight that was going into Bagram, and a growler or somebody came up, turned the jammers on, and was like, "Follow me." And the 2 C-17s came up and just continued on making the radio calls, taking that squawk. And then it got there and they're like, surprise,
party time.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, when you hear shit like that, it's wild to think about. And then you deployed, and then you guys came back and then turned around and went right back again, didn't you?
Yeah, because that was before dwell time was a thing. And so I deployed to Afghanistan, and then came back. And then right when we got back, it was like, February 2003. And they're like, oh, time to go to Iraq now. And then, I was, young, single, like I didn't care.
Right.
But I have a real good buddy who I'm, still pretty close with to this day. And he like essentially left with a pregnant wife and came home to like a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Just insane, and there's no like block leave. And it was, definitely a different time.
Yeah.
So
the mentality back. What's
were
up?
you already flying at that point or?
No, I was, that was my first active duty assignment. I had come on active duty out of the Guard in February of 2001. So I was in Korea as a mortar platoon leader because I was still an armor guy. And so it was nighttime for me. So my wife called me. I was going to bed and my wife called and I let it go to voicemail because I was just like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And I heard her say something about a crash. And I was like, did she fucking wreck the car? So I went in and I listened to it. I was like, wait, what? And I called her back and she was like, turn on the news. So that was a very different experience. So, but it's interesting. Like you were talking about the 18th Airborne Corps, our general, our CG was General Honore. So if you remember Katrina, how what a fucking shit show the whole Katrina thing was. And they brought in this general to like take charge of everything. That was General Honore. They call him the Raging Cajun. He was like from Louisiana and stuff. And I mean, we were talking before going live about, like cursing and all this. That dude would say stuff that would make like sailors blush. I mean, he would just rip into people and, call them every name under the sun. And, but he took over down there, but he was our CG and he was like trying to get us to deploy from Korea to Afghanistan. We're closer. I mean, that was literally like the argument, like we're right fucking there. And I just remember thinking like, I do not want to go to war in a mortar platoon because my vehicle was a soft skin Humvee. I was like, I want to go back to tanks and I'll do that, but I don't want to go in a Humvee. But a lot of guys did. I mean, were you guys?
I was going to say, wow, that sounds really difficult. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm an armor guy, so fuck you. Like that's.
I will say this. Those were also pre-IED days. I remember it wasn't until my second deployment that I had even heard the word IED. And they're like, oh yeah, man, like the fucking IEDs. I'm like, what's the IED? They're like, oh, it's like explosives under the ground. I'm like, oh, like a mine? They're like, no, totally different. It's a bomb, but it's under the ground, and then you go over it and it explodes. I was like, that fucking sounds like a mine to me. And so it took me a while. And then there was like the interim days where it was like Mad Max because the bad guys knew that the green Humvees were soft skin and the tan Humvees were not. So rather than give us armored Humvees, they gave us spray paint. They were like, oh yeah, that'll solve the problem. And then we were like, just sandbags everywhere. And I think at one point they had us welding like 1/2-inch steel plates all over the place, which was great, except for the fact that those Humvees are rated for like 5,000 pounds, not 20,000 pounds. And so like the A frame of the Humvee turned into like a W frame, and like every tire is running like at a 45-degree angle on the pavement, and it was just like you said, different wild times.
Did you guys carry body armor back then? Was that like a thing?
Yeah, we had body armor for all of them. It wasn't the RBAs or like the old steel plate. It was the first. It didn't go. It wasn't like the new fancy shit. It went around and stuff. But we had the ceramic plates and all that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, we had.
It was still, however, the old shitty like Kevlar helmet and not the ACH, which was a welcome.
Yeah, the old Fritz helmet. We had flak jackets in armor, which nobody wore anyway, but they were like the soft armor part. It wasn't like the hard part. It was just for spall damage and stuff. Because I mean, look, if you're in a tank and you get hit with a Sabo round, like you're getting sucked out through a hole like this big in the back of the fucking tank. Like, your armor's not going to save you. But I remember I started flying in 2003 is when I went to flight school, and then it was about 2000. I'm trying to remember 2005. Yeah, it was right before we deployed. So it was early 2006 is when we started getting body armor in flying. And I can't remember the name.
Air Warrior one, right?
Yeah, Air Warrior. There it goes. I couldn't remember the name. Oh my God, that fucked us up so bad. We were unprepared for like because you didn't know how to wear it. And so like we went to JRTC in like May or June, right before the deployment, and they gave us all this Air Warrior stuff. I mean, you had guys who had like 4,000 hours of flight time just puking their guts out because they were just not used to wearing that shit. And it would like sit on your guts, and and it was hot. And it was not a good experience, but we were not used to flying with that. I mean, Phil, maybe, I'm pretty sure you too. Like, did you guys take the seat back out of the aircraft when you flew with armor?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Because remember, we got those. That is the one thing that Morgan did hook us up with, is we got those Eagle vests. And we were like probably the one unit that didn't have to deal with Air Warrior. But after leaving Bragg and going up to Lewis, like I couldn't fly without my armor. And so I would be the one weirdo that would still pull the seat out, put my armor on, just because that's how my body needed to be,
Yeah. Yeah. Phil, you did too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can imagine if you hadn't done that though, like all around you, 360 degrees is different. You got crap in the front of you that's in the way, and that'd be a weird adjustment. Well,
and it's your knees too. Like for me, I mean, and Phil, you're tall. I mean, fuck, all three of us are fairly tall. The 58 is not a big cockpit, and your knees are already really close to the dash, and now you're just being pushed forward another 3 inches or so, with all that shit. And then then you got your pistol and all this other horse shit, and I don't miss wearing all that stuff. But the Eagle Industry stuff was pretty legit. It was a lot more comfortable than the Air Warrior nonsense.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Somebody in the comments earlier said that Phil doesn't look like he's old enough to drink, but I know that that's a false statement.
Can confirm.
I mean, not that we would drink overseas, because that would be wrong, and I would never allow that. But I know that he could drink if he wanted to. I also know that he could slip and slide in a hallway.
Oh yeah. Oh my! Do you still have your Harry Potter scar?
Yeah, I do. It's lightened up over the years, but I do. And I haven't really been slip and sliding since.
How did you get your Harry Potter scar?
Do we want to tell the story?
Well, you could tell that portion. Yeah.
Well, so we were.
Your mental state is irrelevant.
Some festivities with our Australian friends. They were good enough to throw a little party for us, and I remember walking in to their barracks, right, and they had the little bar in there, the Fat Lady's Arms.
Fat Lady's Arm.
Yeah, they served like milk and water. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, milk and water. No, I remember we walked in, and I remember somebody saying like, "Oh, you Yanks like Budweiser and Jack Daniels, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you nailed it!" Like exactly. And anyway, we're having this little party with them, and at some point, I look out in the hallway, and some guy's running up and down with like bottles of shampoo, and somebody else is running behind him with a hose, and they're just like, spraying that shit all over the hallway inside the barracks. And they started doing a slip and slide. And I remember Frank got in on it, and I was thinking like, all right, that sounds like a good time. So I got out there and did it a couple of times. And I remember it was Jeff hotting it, being like, hey, we need to go. Like, it's getting late. And I was like, one more. Famous last word.
We're going to do one more.
I kept going down the hallway, and you remember they had that dog. I think I want to say her name was like Raja or something, right? It's same dog. Weeks later, I watched just physically dismantle a motorcycle when they were grabbing. Remember the IED maker with the GIMP? I think it was the same dog. Anyway, like this, like I said, well-trained attack dog. She walks out of a doorway, and I'm like running full bore down this slippery hallway, and there's no opportunity to stop. I think I might have made some attempt to like go over, and so I trip over the dog and come down, and they had like a little bench in the hallway, and I caught it right there across the top of my eye. And I don't remember, it knocked me out. And I just remember waking up, laying in the middle of the hallway, like faces all around me. And one of the Australian guys looks down and he goes, "Mate, your face looks like a fucking vagina." It's all laid open on my eye. So they just took me in the next room, and one of their medics just like threw some stitches in there. And
Oh,
then
you
I
mean
had
the same medics who were just as drunk as you?
Richa. No, Beef's got it.
Well,
Richa, is that right?
There we go. Dog's name was,
Oh, nice.
That was close.
and he also says, "I remember helping patch him up."
Well, thank you. It went pretty well. Like it's honestly not a bad scar.
The best part
because I
about it,
think
though, was
I forbid you from going to briefings for like a couple days because I didn't
he had
want
to wear his hat
anyone.
down like a vato. He had his PT cap on, down like covering his eyes so that nobody would see it, walking around looking up like
And I
this.
remember like
He didn't wear his fucking hat.
a week and a half later, I remember I had to go into the XO's office because I was like turning in a stack of paperwork, you know, it's like award submissions or something. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, "So how did you get that shiner?" And I remember just being like, because, you know, Gordy, you and the warrants were all the time like, tell him you walked into into the tail boom, or, you know, you fell in the bathroom and hit your face on the sink or whatever. And I remember I was like starting to come up with something, and somebody else just walks in the room, and I was like, "All right, sir, there you go. Later."
I feel like, yes, we did a great job of keeping things under wraps. They all fucking knew. They all
Well,
knew.
at least it wasn't doing snow angels in the rock pit.
I was gonna say, like, when I got running down the runway in my flip flops, like, you don't think Tower called over and they're like, "What's this guy doing?" Like, they all knew.
I don't think I remember that one.
It was the next post fight victory party.
Let's see what. Oh, it says something else.
No, Casmo was not.
Wasn't happy.
He didn't talk to me for about 2 days.
I do remember. Well, I was mad because I wasn't mad. Maybe I was mad. I don't remember if I was mad. I just didn't want the blowback. And yeah, I was like, he doesn't go to briefing. So like every time a team went, like it was like he would stay in the CP and everyone else would go to the brief.
You seem mad. I remember walking in your room and you're in that ratty old armchair that you somehow acquired, and you're like sitting there.
Oh, the chaplain.
And I started to say something about like, okay, so like this is what happened. I'll explain it. And you look at me and you're like, you were drinking, weren't you? Go to your fucking room. I don't want to talk to you. And that was it for like 2 days.
That doesn't sound like what I would say.
Good times.
We recovered.
100%. No. Yeah. We had a lot of interesting stories. You did say something famous last words. And Phil had some very famous words in the chow hall. Gordy, do you...
Come to daddy. Phil and his weekly burrito.
They made excellent burritos there in TK, and it was not.
The food in TK was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
it was fantastic. Kandahar was a shit show. I went down to Kandahar one time for like a change of command ceremony or something. You know, I had to go down there doing, showing the flag, and I went into like one of the chow halls, and I'm going through the line. And literally one of the meals, they had a little tag or something, naming what it is. And it said fish died, like had died. That was the name of the meal. And I was like, I'm gonna make a fucking sandwich. Like it was disgusting. But up there, I mean, we had you had eggs to order. You had the Baskin Robbins thing, right? We had like 5 or 6 different flavors of ice cream.
Yeah.
Phil, I remember one time we're sitting there eating and Phil's like, just like almost like under his breath or something, just like, man, I wish we had one of those panini machines like they have in Kandahar. And I remember I just like put down my food for a second. I was like, can you imagine the motherfuckers in Bastogne listening to us right now, like freezing our ass off, no gloves, no shoes, and here we are, 100 years later or whatever, asking about a panini machine. But yeah, so
they had a panini press. So you go in there on night shift, and it was like the tureen of soup. And they had a panini press, and I'll be damned if I didn't eat paninis every freaking time.
God, war's hell.
Who had the panini press?
That was up in JBAD.
Oh,
on the second rotation we did after TK.
Oh, well, war was hard when I went. I didn't realize you guys had a panini press, but
no, honestly, the food in TK was better than JBAD.
Yeah,
but at any rate, yeah, you remember Spicy Burger Night?
Oh yeah,
I remember that was Jerry's favorite. And
yeah,
we'd go out on. I remember early in the deployment, I was flying with Pat and Jake and Jerry, because it was when we were still like 4 to a chew, and it was like we were like the 3 a.m. team. And so we'd get back in time for lunch. And I remember every day, Jerry with his, like, he's walking like this, and he'd go, I'm gonna put away some fucking chow today. Every day.
Yeah, I mean, mine first Ramesh and I, who lives really close to me. I need to get him on with you guys. But our big thing was like rice pudding day. I don't know why, but we both like, just not too long ago we were talking about it. I went over to his house for a barbecue and I was like, oh, you remember the rice pudding? He's like, oh yeah. So stupid, but like you knew it was coming because like it would be a meal and they'd have rice. And you're like, nah, 2 days from now it's rice pudding day, because they'd have all these leftovers, and sure as shit there'd be rice pudding. And we'd bring like extra raisins. I think he had like a thing of raisins, and we'd just like bring some raisins, like, yeah. And then there was Chick-fil-A day, like they would have like the chicken patties, and then we would just make like a Chick-fil-A sandwich, just put some pickles on it and call it a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Yeah, it was stupid. But the burrito thing killed me, because what was beautiful about that scenario is that you were not talking to us.
Yeah.
You had built your masterpiece burrito, and there was like a whole bunch of us sitting at the table. I remember because you were sitting across from me at the end of the table, and we were all having a conversation, and you just fucking manhandle it up. You get her all wrapped up, and you just went, come to Daddy or come to Papa, one of the two. I don't remember what. Yeah, come to Papa. But it was like this almost like under your breath, like breathy comment. And I remember I just went like, what did you just say? And then like drew attention, and you were like, oh. That's what was beautiful about it. If you'd have said it like loud enough for everyone to hear, I don't think it wouldn't have hit quite the same.
No, I mean, I was definitely in the zone.
Definitely in the zone. Tickle the burrito. What I mean, endless stories, but I was thinking, Phil, on a more serious note.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how many like emergency / oh fuck moments I had on that deployment, and they were like all with you. Because we had the hydraulics, we had the mushing. I think I was
today, yeah.
yeah. And I think I was with you when we had the low rotor in that valley that connected like what was that next valley over? It started with like a D or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. Like to the west.
Yeah,
Dayrwood. Yeah. I feel like that was you. And suddenly like we were in that middle of that valley where there's like nowhere to go, and all of a sudden we get a low rotor warning. Like, and I'd never had that happen before or since. Like just suddenly just low rotor warning went off. And because I think it was with you. Does this sound familiar?
I remember that happening with Slim. I don't remember a low rotor over by Dayrwood.
Maybe it was Ahmad. I just remember whoever it was, they, somebody was in the right seat, I was sitting in the left seat, and that went off, and I just immediately just fucking like I have controls, and I just like jammed the collective not down, but like just lowered it, and I started looking around immediately because I was like, we're going into the valley. There's nowhere else to go. It was not good. But we had the hydraulics, which there was so much to unpack on that one because you had just come back from leave, right? Yeah. I think this was like your first flight. And you were sitting right seat initially.
Yeah.
Is that right? Do you remember that?
Right seat. I remember we stopped at Frontenac to get gas, and I was like, man, I was still kind of like getting back to used to being in the saddle. And I was like, man, my ass hurts. Like, let me sit in the left seat because I can move around more. And so we just swapped. And then it was just a little bit after that. Well, it was dark, right? Because we'd gone up towards, what was that little OP? It was up towards the northeast as the valley branched off.
Yeah, we were just up north.
Like a little patrol base up there. And I remember they just had a patrol out, and we were just watching them come back home, just keeping an eye on things for them. It was so, nothing super dramatic was happening. It was just one of those, zero illume nights, or dark as a sack of assholes, as you like to say. And, we're just cruising around, keeping an eye on things. And all of a sudden, just, bong, 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 bong. And we looked down, it was hydraulics failure. Like, okay, like, got it. We can handle this. I remember it taking kind of a long time to find the circuit breaker in the dark, and like actually doing it. But, fine. We got control. Yeah. You got control of it. Fine. It still flies. The thing that I remember really kind of being unnerving was that at first, the pedals were stiff, and you don't think about that necessarily being hydraulically controlled. You can feel it in the collective and cyclic, obviously, but you go, shit, I think we got a fixed pedal. And I just remember thinking in that moment, like, well, this is it. Hydraulic fixed pedal. Like, we're just going to roll down the runway. And
because we never practiced it, right? You did hydraulics off in flight school, and then you got out to the unit and you never did it again. They would turn off the SCAS, which doesn't feel anything like losing hydraulics. I don't know why we do that, but that's what we do. Yeah.
And I remember, and the other thing I remember about that was it was only recently that they put in the hard stand runway for the UAVs, because Terrancat had a dirt strip, which I don't know what the prospects of the run on a dirt strip are, but it's probably not as smooth as it looks with C-17s landing there all the time. But they just put in that one with that nice steel what was it, EM2 or whatever that steel matting was. Something. And so yeah, it was a nice run on, and then the Dutch fire and rescue guys were there waiting for us. So it was as it went. But
well, I do recall, like, we've been up for like 4 hours on this flight, and it was like you said, it was a nothing going on. It was one of those like Frank ones, because Frank was lead, and Frank, like, if you could tell him, hey, you're staying out there like 10 hours, he would just stay out there 10 hours because he loved it, right? That's just what he wanted to do. Because I remember I'd be like, Frank, nothing's going on. Like, we're going home. Like, let's turn around. I'm hungry. Like, there's literally no reason to be here. And so I think on that one, we were actually turning to head home, and we were about 10 miles north. And I don't know if you heard it, but I heard it happen. I didn't know what it was. I remember hearing like this weep sound, this whining just for a few seconds. Because I remember thinking in my head, like, what would anyone shoot at us that sounds like this? Because I just can't recognize what this sound is, and it's not normal. And then the air, I felt the controls just like jump in my hand just for a second, and went bong. And which I think the hydraulic one, it only bonged once, if I recall. Like, it's just a single like bong, and you're like, oh shit, and it popped up and said hydraulics failure. And I called Frank. I was like, well, we just lost hydraulics. And it was this long pause, and then Frank calls me. He's like, "Are you serious?" And because he told me later, he's like, "I thought you were kidding because you just said it so like matter of factly." It's like, we just lost hydraulics. And then we're flying back, and yeah, the pedals. I just was not used to that, or I couldn't remember that because it had been so long that the pedals were also much stiffer than I remember. And I remember telling you, like, I think something's wrong with the pedals, and you were just like, "Oh god." And I think I made a comment like, aren't you glad you came back from leave?
Honestly, the rushing was a lot scarier event. I mean, the hydraulic one with that I think there was that moment of kind of like, uh-oh, but
yeah,
whatever.
Well, once you get it under control, it's fine. Yeah.
As long as
I think the worst part on that was, one, it was night. You never practice hydraulics off at night. Yeah. So you're trying to do it under goggles. And just like you said, there's that UAV strip, which I remember it being concrete, but it doesn't matter. It was hard. It wasn't dirt. And this had been like a recurring conversation throughout the deployment. Like, hey, if you had to do a run-on landing, where are you going to do it? Because I remember some guys were saying, well, I would go and try for parking, because you did have that like open area. Yeah, and there were some people, like FARP, parking. And I had just driven past the UAV strip a couple days prior to this happening. And I remember looking out the window at it, because it had arrestor cables. That's how they would catch those. I think they were Shadows. I can't remember what kind they were. But I remember kind of seeing those. And so when I shot my approach, I just did it really long, because I was like, okay, they're roughly there. But the hardest part of that approach was there was no lights.
Yeah.
And so there was lights on the runway, which were garbage because it was a dirt runway. And then there was just black. It was just this nothing area. And then you had all the Dutch firefighters lined up alongside of that with every light imaginable going. And Frank was talking to Tower, doing all that stuff, being like super helpful. And I remember I just called Frank. I was like, dude, tell them to turn those lights off. I can't see a fucking thing. And so he turned them all off. And then I just shot my approach for the dark. And I remember keeping it above like 40 knots, because again, the tail rotor was acting weird, and I just wasn't registering in my head or anything, which still, it was the right answer. But I mean, we were screaming in, like at 40, 50 knots. because I wanted to keep it above 40 because that was like the magic number. And I remember us hitting, and like it was a good landing, and we're skidding down straight. And then do you remember the 58 at the end of a run on land? It would just start sliding off to the right. And the moment it started to slide, that's where their little control station was. And so I was like, motherfucker, like there was like nothing but space. And now we're just going to slide right into this thing. But we stopped. And I remember sparks were like flying past us off the skids. And that's when, I got out and I just kind of like just sat there for a second. The fire guys were, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm good. I just need a minute. Like I'm a little stressed, but the mushing, tell that story. Cause that was fun.
So I got thinking about it because you were saying like, what are some thoughts about flying in the mountains? And I remember the controls are just a lot more sluggish. You're high. I mean, TK was what, around 4,000 feet, I think.
4.5, I think. Yeah,
like 42, 43, something like that. And then so you're already kind of high. It's hot most of the year, and so everything's just kind of sluggish. And we were a little bit south, around belly button, right? So it's kind of that kind of no man's land between TK and Frontenac. And I if I remember correctly, it was FE Bravo was out doing a patrol, and we were, so we had checked in with them because they'd had a tick or something, a few firefights clearing through a village or a couple of little villages, and they'd had some recent contacts. We got on station, and I was flying with you, and I want to say Frank and Weaver. They were leading. Yeah,
Weaver was in the right seat, Frank on the left.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we were both rocket Hellfire because between us we had 3 Hellfires, and our sight was busted. We got on station, and I don't remember if the picture was grainy, or I seem to remember it had like a bob that you couldn't control, and so you couldn't keep the sight on anything. So we ended up just letting them designate and shoot. But we got on station, and FE Bravo kind of talked on where they were, and we got some guys moving. It was like there was a little ravine, just running dry, it was dry at the time, running through the village, and there's some guys coming out of the village in the tree line, and so they cleared us onto those guys. And I remember, I think Frank and Weave shot there. I don't remember if we had 2 and they had 1 or vice versa, but they shot theirs and then designated for us, and we shot ours. So it was like 3 Hellfires, which, were pretty good shots. And then we came back around for a pass with rockets just to, pepper up the tree line with those. And I remember they shot first, and you correct me if your recollection's at all different, but we had bumped, behind them. We were trail, and they took a little while before they, turned out. And so we were already like in that dive for a little bit before we had, a clear line to shoot. You put the rockets down, but then as you go to turn and climb out of it, we started mushing. And for anybody who doesn't know mushing, it's when your rotor blade tips rear, you pull back on the cyclic, you're kind of dipping into the dirty air of the downwash, and in that higher, those thinner air conditions, you're not producing lift. And so the aircraft it gets a vibration, just shudders along, and you're just sinking. And really all you can do is put the cyclic back forward and try to fly out of it, right, to get out of your air. And you can't apply more collective is the moral of the story. You can't power out of it. Yeah. But I just remember looking out the door, and as we're coming down, it's into this ravine. We've just shot 3 Hellfires and a dozen rockets in here. And the locals won't be happy. And watching the treetops just kind of get higher around the side of the aircraft. And I don't remember what the altitude was, but it was not high before we got climbing again.
Yeah, it was pretty low. Well, what happened, you're sort of right. We didn't bump. What happened was he went in for rockets, and we were up high behind him, like probably like 1,000 feet AGL. And we were just kind of like watching. And Frank was like, we're just going to put a couple of rockets in this tree line or whatever. I was like, all right, cool. I had no intention to shoot. Like I was just like covering him, observing or whatever. Because it just wasn't that situation where he's like, okay, we better be on him, like, what is it? Cover 1 or whatever that bullshit that like Pat came up with, like the cover 1, cover 2, that type of thing. And so I guess we're cover 3. So he's shoot the rockets and he pulls off, and he's like, and he starts giving us corrections. And I'm like, oh, he he wants me to shoot. So I nose it over. And yeah, so now we're like coming out and it's like the Memphis Belle. I'm like trying to pull it out, you know, and yeah, we just start mushing. And yeah, you just see like the hilltops just coming up like this. And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. And I think you said later, like, you're going to mark the target with one burning OH-58 Delta.
We were online.
And Frank said later that like they're pulling out and he's looking back over their shoulder and he sees us just like plowing in like this with our nose up in the air. We're just falling. And he's like, you see that? That's mushing. Because, you know, Ahmad was still new. So he's like teaching him shit. He's like, that's mushing. And I was like, oh my God. And then we had the thing up on the top of the hill too, right? Remember the Predator or the Reaper or whatever the fuck it was?
Yeah, marking that it was a solar panel, right? For a repeater?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the guy's like, hey, mate, there's a repeater up on top of the hill. And I was like, all right, cool, we'll go take a look. And it was like, 2,000 foot mountain, you know, AGL mountain peak. So we go puttering up there and you're like, oh yeah, I see it. And it was like, yeah, this little solar panel with an antenna sticking out of it. And I think I remember calling him like, okay, do you want us to like shoot it? Because I was just going to have you take your M4 out and just like shoot the solar panel. And the dude's like, nah, mate, we're going to drop a bomb on it. Because the Reaper was overhead with a 500-pound bomb or some shit. And the JTACs, I guess they keep track of like tonnage, you know, like that's their scorecard. Yep. And so we called the Reaper, and I think the Reaper was like, can you sparkle it? So shoot the IR pointer. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon. And you and I look at each other like, what the, and I was like, just put your goggles on and don't put leave the lens caps on because I don't know what to do. So he puts his goggles on without the lens caps or with the lens caps on, and he sparkles it. And then you're like, oh, yep, they see it. Because you said like the whole top of the mountain just started like flashing because they're shooting theirs on top of yours. So you got this little spot, and all of a sudden there's like this, you know, like 8 yard by 8 yard flash. And then we go zipping off, and the whole top of the mountain just explodes. But that was a cool engagement because then the Apache showed up as we were leaving. And they were like checking in, you know, they're like this is Fable 4-1 in flight, 2 Apaches, blah, blah, blah. And the dude's like, Roger, Bam Bam's cleaned up everything, but we've got a couple NAIs for you to look at. And we're all like, ooh, yeah. You'll never hear it again, you know, but it was like beautiful. And I was like, fuck, I wish that was on tape. It was so good. Yeah. Gordy, did you have any close calls on that tour? I don't remember anything crazy.
I mean, probably my closest call on that tour was also with Phil. Not when I thought we were going to die, but when I thought we were about to go to jail.
Oh God, yeah. Well, geez, yeah.
You
opened the door on that one. Yeah.
You know the follow up to that too, right? Is that so I'll give the 2-second version of the story. We were out supporting the special operations guys way out east of Cobra. Well, not even, I guess even before that, we were out during pre-flight. We tuned up the SATCOM radio to the swoopy guy freak just to see what was going on. And we recognized, hey, there's a fight happening, and plugged in the grid. We're like, oh man, we're close. And so without going through Wolfpack or anyone, we're just called them. We're like, you guys want some Kiowas? And they're like, yeah, absolutely.
Because they had a full stack. They had a Spectre, they had F-18s, they had UAS on station. Yeah. Then I remember weather was bad, and so some of that stuff was pulling off.
Well, I think a lot of it too was, we had shot with those guys so much that it was part like we're on cool guy status, but too like they trusted us, And
we went
out there, and everything was fantastic. And honestly, and it's funny too, as I think back about that day, Phil, I think one of the biggest things that saved us, even if everything else was procedurally the same, the fact that I was not on the radio, just because of how like you were yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full, like you like spoke in doctrine. And I can only imagine listening to those tapes if I would have been talking to Jag. And it would have been fine because it would, from a legal standpoint, but just like, from a
that's the credit to Frank and Pat though, about like just drilling, talk to the tape, and build your story before it's time to pull the trigger. Because I remember we were intentional about that even after we had a conversation and everybody knew what was up. Before we shot, we went back and like talked back through with Jag all the rationale of what we were about to do and why.
I think too. I think that, while we all like to, we knew those guys well enough that we would talk to them on the radio just like normal people. But there was something in the air that we all knew that it was a little more serious. But yeah, we had almost a textbook perfect 3-vehicle engagement, lead, trail, middle. Went back to get gas. Our FARP asked us when we got back, like, "Hey, what's going on with the CivCast shoot?" And we're like, "What are you talking about?" "No, that's not us. We're dealing with something else." Went back out again, ran out of gas again, came back, and they're like, "You're done.
You need to turn off the aircraft."
But the crazy thing about that story is, and I don't know if you know this, and maybe you guys don't know this, they interviewed people, the Miami Herald. I have the article. The Miami Herald interviewed people that were on the ground, and they talked about how we just kept firing our machine guns at them, even though we were both rocket.
Yeah, we didn't have machine. Yeah. None of our aircraft had 50 guns.
It's dubious, right? Because those guys had come up from the province north of there, right? Or that's where the vehicles had originated.
Yeah.
Like before the sun came up, they were watching them, and the story was they were going down to
a helmet offensive. Yeah.
Right.
And it was just, it was just so crazy how it was one of those.
If we're going to go into this, let's unpack it, right? So let's go back, because it's probably confusing for anyone who's listening, but do you guys want to talk about it? I mean, you want to go through it? Okay.
I don't mind.
So, because I was in the States when this happened, which probably saved me from getting fired. Honestly, the undercurrent of leadership, the way things were back then, I probably would have been fired if I wasn't out of the country. They would have just found a reason, like, "Oh, you're fucking relieved." But so go through, like, you guys, you checked in, you went out, and it was nighttime still. You checked in with you're saying Jag. What we're saying is Jaguar. That was the call sign of the JTACs who worked with the special operations guys up in that region. And so you checked in with Jaguar. What was going on when you guys checked in?
So they were very, they had been developing this situation for probably the last 3 or 4 hours. And they had us actually just go out to Cobra and sit flat pitch. They didn't have us come out immediately. They said, "Hey, go here." And if you see the map of Shawalicot, you can kind of see. So they were just west of. They were like 1 valley over from Cobra. These guys were 2 valleys over, and they were coming down that Shawalicot Valley on the way to Helmand. And the chatter that they had been picking up was saying, like, "Hey, we know where this ODA is, and all these ANA guys." And it was originally a 5-vehicle convoy. 2 of the vehicles broke off and went directly towards them. The radio chatter said the 3 vehicles are going to come around south, and we'll have them from both sides. And so they were waiting, and their kind of decision point was, if these vehicles continue straight and proceed to Helmand, good job. It's their lucky day. If they start to come around, then it's kind of time to escalate. And so as soon as they started to break off back towards the east, they had us come out and get eyes on them, and proper vehicle ID, all that jazz. And originally the plan was it was going to be a 3-way shot between, it was me and Phil, it was Ahmad, and I think Omar Torres.
Yep.
And then the third vehicle was going to be shot by the Predator. But for whatever reason, those guys had 2 missiles that day. And so, I think that part of the engagement did kind of fall down to the fact that we had such a good working relationship with those guys that they were like, "Nope, we're going to have Bam Bam do all 3 of them."
Yeah. And I remember we discussed too, we told the Predator crew to wave off because we were going to have to go back and get gas.
Yeah.
They were going to have station time. So like, keep your missile because you're going to be here. So,
yeah. And so we waited until they were at an advantageous spot for us, for the engagement site. And we timed up the first 2 shots that hit within, a second or 2 of each other on the front and rear vehicle. And I remember, so Phil and I shot the front vehicle, and it was a Hilux that had 18 dudes in it. Crazy.
It was packed.
And then Omar and Ahmad came around and shot the middle vehicle. And we, at this point too, we were all like, just because of how long it takes things to develop in situations like that, like we're already pretty close to bingo. And so we ended up going, there was at that point, the middle vehicle people though, they knew like, hey, the car in front of me and behind me just exploded. We better unass this thing. And so the third missile, it hit the vehicle, but it hit the engine block and all the doors were open. So it didn't do as much damage to like the people. And so we decided to go back in with rockets. And I think on our first pass, Phil and I we saw some like brightly colored clothes and we're like, oh boy. So we immediately, called off everything. But at the same time, you can still see like fighting age dudes like running and getting cover. Like they're still in the fight at that point. So we break to get gas. And that's when that first radio call happened. And they're like, hey, what's going on out there? And at this point, we were like, I don't know what you're talking about, but we're in the middle of a tick. So we're hauling ass back out there. And the craziest part about it was by the time we got back, the locals had already picked up all the bodies and stacked them like a cordwood on the side of the road. And so, it's like, what's there, what's not there. I know JAG was trying to get some Blackhawks to come because they're, bird's eye distance or as the crow flies, they're pretty close, but it's, it's a significant drive.
Hours. Yeah.
On the other side of the ridge.
Yeah. So they were trying to get a ride out there. And by this point we had not even given a sit rep to Wolfpack about what was going on. And it had already hit the Associated Press that it was 42 women and children. And it's like, come on, so by the time when we got back for gas that time, yeah, like you said, like it was a shutdown. Like you're going straight.
I seem to remember McChrystal had already called and like issued an apology to Karzai before our blades were done.
Yeah. And I remember too, so we landed, and before we even went into the talk, we kind of realized like, yo, like this could go bad. We gave the PIMCA cards to the crew chiefs and we're like, make a copy of this before we turn it in. But, because like I want a copy of it because I know that everything that we did, was both like legal and it was against bad guys. But yeah, it was crazy. And then to see that hit, like the Miami Herald, like before our debrief had come in saying that we were like shooting machine guns was just, it honestly, being on that side of a story that comes out as some huge civcast makes me question all of them.
Yeah.
When you see things in the news
for so long, I never saw the story straight. And we knew factually that large parts of what we were saying was wrong. And I kind of understand why the Army, like nobody ever said anything different because at that point you're managing the damage, the sort of the moral damage of the Afghan government. I mean, airstrikes and civcasts were a hot thing, but nobody ever retracted it. And we knew from, minute go that what was being reported wasn't correct. It wasn't true.
Yeah. And by the time JAG did get there, of course, there's no weapons. There's brass. There's no weapons. They did find the majority of the dudes were card carrying PAC Army guys, weren't they? Do you remember that part?
No, I don't. I remember you had some conversations with the ODA guys when we were down in Kandahar, though.
We went through the process, the whole investigation process, and we were never on the line. The Pat Mackery, like the ODA guys were on the line, but those are our Pizzos, But the craziest part about it all is if you fast forward a year and you had moved on to bigger and better things, and we're all headed back over to Afghanistan, and we went through Manis. Yes. And as part of the RSOI process going through Manis, you got to do your vehicle rollover training. You got to do this. You got to do that. You have to sit through a bunch of briefings. In one of the videos, like Safety Center produced, animated everything was that whole day, but the version where we did shoot women and children.
Yeah, The Army had turned it into a teaching lesson.
Yeah, it was the exact scenario but it would obviously.
I wish I was in the room with you, Gordy, because I remember they got to the end of the video and I'm sitting there just like, holy crap! This is a thing. I was like, actually, I can tell you about the lesson, guys.
Yeah, I did. Well, I raised my hand and I was like, I don't know how to break this to you, but 3 of the 4 pilots that like are in this fucking room right now. And, there was no point in getting upset about it because it was just some poor Air Force E5. Like, he's just like, yo, dog, I just pushed play on the PowerPoint. But I have a copy of it. He was cool enough. I was like, can I please have a copy of this video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I remember the first time I heard about it, I was in Kuwait because I had flown, you land in Kuwait and then you get sent out. Like, remember Kuwait was just like the black hole. You could get stuck in a time warp and be there. I think I was there for an extra week. Like, so I'd been home on leave for 2 weeks and I was in Kuwait for like 5 days. And I remember reading like Army Times and it was like, massive Civcas strike in Uruzgan province. And I was like, glad that wasn't my boys, because I would have heard about it. and then like 2 days later, I land in Kandahar, and we had those Roshan phones or whatever, and I call First Sergeant, and I was like, hey, I just landed, I'm in Kandahar, so I'm gonna try to catch, whatever up to you guys. And he's like, yeah, everything's good. The boys are down getting questioned right now in Kandahar. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, for that Civcas thing. And I just remember being like, that was us. And like, I said it so loud that everyone on the bus like turned and looked at me like, what is this guy? What's going on?
Did you come see us? I don't remember that. Were you were down in Canada when we were there?
I landed. I don't even remember how, but I think I got there. I got off the plane and I think I just jumped on a Black Hawk that was going up to TK. And then I went into like the S3's office, and like the very first thing he was like, well, you guys fucked up. And I was like, I don't know. Heard it was a good shoot. I was like, why don't we wait till the investigation gets finished? Because like, why are we talking about any of this stuff before we go through the process and check things out? I think some UAV guys got fired over that, though. I think really? There was some bad intel that was getting pushed. Yeah, I don't remember
the report, like, years or whatever after it happened, and they had faulted some of them for like some of the reporting that they were doing, but it was like, it wasn't stuff that we were privy to. It was like, recording the conversations they were having off camera and stuff.
Right.
And that's always related to the period of time where we were on station with them either.
Yeah.
Well, what people have to remember too is particularly in that situation, you guys were a platform by which to deliver munitions. Like, that was a little uncommon for us. It was common working with like people like Jaguar who are used to just stacking the deck with lots of stuff, but they're ultimately the guys on the ground are ultimately responsible for calling airstrikes in, right? As an air crew member, you are responsible for the munitions that come off your aircraft, but up to a certain point, if you're cleared to engage a target and you don't have any solid reason not to engage that target, that's your job. Like, that's what you do. I think for us as Army aircraft, it's a little bit different in some respects because of the way that we operate, because we don't necessarily work like CAS. But at the end of the day, you guys were CAS that day. I mean, 100%. You were checking in with a JTAC. You were getting talked onto a target. They were getting fed intel because they weren't on the scene necessarily observing, right? So it's like a type 3 control. They're getting intel from other places. I'm sure they had one of those rover things or whatever they call it, and they're watching the UAV feed too, but the UAV guys are feeding them. I remember you guys telling me around that time that the Spectre gunship was overhead and they were trying to get permission to shoot. And I think the SF guys were like, no, let's hold off. Let's wait till daylight so we can develop this more. So there was a lot of tactical patience. And I think that's what saved a lot of people's careers. If they would have just been like, fuck it, just do it, it would have been probably a little bit different story. But I think just like you said, Gordy, in the beginning, like going through the process, and it's so mind numbing. It takes so long. Like that engagement I talked about earlier where we landed with like 20 pounds of gas. It's because we waited for like 45 minutes for approval. I see these guys moving tactically through the woods after an IED had gone off. Like, they're fucking bad. Like, there's no reason for dudes to be hanging out at night, running around between the trees and doing all the shit they were doing. But I didn't just fucking say, just shoot them and be done with it. No, I went through the process and called home, and it takes a really long time. And that's sort of the due diligence. And that's why I get frustrated personally when, and it happens. It is what it is. But people always say, oh, you guys just you just shoot at anything. Man, there's so much work that goes into into those engagements. And certainly there are times where people kind of just take it a little bit fast and loose. It did not happen in our troop. Like, I don't remember anyone ever being fast and loose. And because of what you just talked about with like Frank and Pat, like there was a culture of doing it slow and doing it right and doing it methodical and talking to the tape, which for people who don't know what we're talking about, that's like understanding that you're being recorded and that everything you say is going to be examined in full detail. I remember having a flight canceled one time, or a mission canceled, because they needed me to fly gun tape down to Kandahar from, I think, the day team, because they had engaged a dude who was very clearly putting an IED. And then the report was, well, he was looking for cell phone signal. What, 50 feet below the ground? Like, where was he looking for cell phone signal? Like, he's digging a fucking hole on the side of the road. He's got far side, or, long range security either side of him. And there was a secondary on his goddamn motorcycle when it got hit. Like, he's bad. But I had to stop. I was doing it probably was. It was probably you. I don't know if Phil was. I think
on that one,
but I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, the motorcycle with the Aussies found him. But to what you were saying, like, people get like, oh, you guys get excited. I'm not gonna lie, I do get excited because this is my job. You know what? Bankers get excited when they make a loan. Like, if you're a salesman, you have a big sale. Like, you're going to get excited. My job, this was what I practiced to do. And so when it happened, I was excited. Now, does that mean that I was ever not super deliberate? No, that they're not mutually exclusive. But with this case, with that incident in particular, like, it hurt a little bit to know that, like, hey, do you guys want to hear my side of the story? Do you want to see what actually happened before you villainize everyone? And the answer to that was, unfortunately, no.
The investigators were fine. They were super professional, the investigators, because we did a NATO investigation, and then we did a U.S.-led investigation. So it was like 2 weeks of stuff. And then, granted, we individually were not involved all that time, but, they were talking to us and the ODA and the JTAC a lot and all that. And it was our brigade, because you were gone, unfortunately. And so it was like, Alpha Troop kind of circled up and, like, took care of us. I remember Frank really going to bat, but the S3, the battalion commander, the brigade commander, nobody said boo to us. It's kind of like, go sit in your talk, you'll be dealt with. Nobody asked, nobody wanted to know. It was just like, and it was kind of like, man. Like,
just to tie things all circle all the way back around to Captain Taylor. You want to talk about awards that are behind the times. Sounds to me like we were vindicated and we smoked 42 guys. That doesn't sound like investigation. That sounds to me like air medal. Well, yeah. I don't expect that's going to be hitting your mailbox anytime soon, but I won't hold my breath.
Yeah. No, that was incredibly frustrating. We were already frustrated. You bring up an excellent point. Alpha Troop was cut off from its squadron, was stuck with an Apache battalion who, we got along well. I think with the flight troops, like with the Apache troop, with the Blackhawk company, like, we all got along. There was a war. I don't know how much you guys saw of it. I saw it. There was a war going on between the battalion and the squadron headquarters. There was jockeying for resources. The Apache commander at the time was not happy about getting Kiowas and losing Apaches. Like, he wanted to just be pure and do Apache stuff, and I got it, but that's not the right kind of war for that. It wasn't the right type of environment. And I think, and I've watched this happen anytime that units are split apart. They can be the tightest family ever. The moment you start splitting parts of that out, it becomes very insular, and it's like, no, this is mine, And guys that I'd known for years and years and years, I'd have to, like, arm wrestle with them to get us parts. There was some special tail rotor tool that, they sent us one, and they only had like 2. They sent us one, and the Blackhawk guys, like, I guess they put the box down somewhere and no one got it, so it just disappeared. And so, like, we needed to get stuff done on our tail rotor, and I was like, hey, we need this tool. Well, you got to fly it down here. I was like, bro, I got 6 airplanes up here. What am I, like, I can't do that. You have to bring me this fucking tool. We have to do this. We have to work together. But it would hurt me, because I was like, I've known this dude. I'm not gonna say his name, but I've known this dude for years. and I'm having to argue with you about taking care of me from a maintenance standpoint. Like, man, this is your job. Like, and it's my job to tell you like that it's your job. And it was very frustrating. And so I think that was like the icing on the cake, because that was fairly late in the deployment. Because I think I went home, and I think it was February. I think I went home around February. And so, yeah, I know I came back and you guys were like totally down in the dumps, you know, to some extent about that, because yeah, it's unfair, right? It's unfair but the strategic messaging that goes on, you know, and I hate to say it on their behalf to you, it's like, it's not personal. Like they didn't give, like, it's not personal. It's business, right? It's like, how do you keep the machine going? And I know you guys are smart enough to know that, but it still hurts and it still feels really shitty.
I mean, when you commanders in your company talk, it could be personal. You know, like at the Stanley McChrystal level, like, got it. You got to say what you got to say, because we're losing the public perception at large. And that was just one more, you know, brick in the wall, so to speak. But
I think too, and I don't know if it was just a regime change, but it was a very different experience that the next deployment. Yeah. And maybe that was because they left the whole brigade in those task force formations, and it wasn't a last minute like, hey, Apache company, you're going here. Hey, captured, you're going here. Yeah, like when that second, that the Salerno deployment, it truly did feel like, we are like a task force at this point. And maybe it's because we had, done so much together, it could have just been a leadership thing, but it just had such a different feel that I never had a moment on that deployment. Like if I came back and we had, had an engagement, you were never guilty until proven innocent, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, I think splitting up like the task force, because you guys were doing that when I left, and we were literally move the hangar, or like offices to the other hangar. I think that was the right call to build those relationships, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's those relationships, and you're kind of adopted, the redheaded stepchild or whatever. And I don't want to speak too ill of Gordy and his red hair, but his soullessness, but yeah, you kind of get treated like shit when it's that last minute transfer. Yeah. So, well, boys, it's been 2 hours, and I have an early flight to work tomorrow, which sucks. And I'm sure Gordy's got to study his poster.
Yep.
And learn all the goodness. And Phil's got probably a pipe to smoke and maybe a snifter of brandy.
Some prune juice.
I've been taking close notes of all the good suggestions in the chat. So.
Yeah. These guys want you to fly DCS. That's a huge monetary commitment for people.
Yeah. When you first started when the Kiowa model of DCS came out, I got all excited to give it a shot.
It's not even out yet.
oh, it's not out yet. You got me all excited, and I downloaded it, and like my laptop's too shitty, and just with traveling, I gotta live the laptop life. I can't. I guess I could get a gaming PC just for that, but
pretty soon you're gonna get that fat airline money. You're gonna be like, I don't know what to do with all this money that I have.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit to outpace the corporate job.
Really? I'll have to look at their pay scale. I haven't looked at Alaskan's pay scale.
Oh, he's got a fat bump.
Oh yeah. Well, that must be nice. Well. All right. Well, gents, like I said, thanks for coming on and reminiscing.
Thank you.
It's disjointed, just like our relationship, but I've enjoyed it. We got to do it again. I think with alcohol next time, and I'm sure there's a ton of other stories that we've forgotten about. So I'll have to think through. We'll have to get like the whole gang, like just get like fucking everybody. We need the quote book. That's what we need.
No, it's 2023.
Now you go to
that would be the worst thing you could ever do is to
that's true.
That thing got burned.
I was thinking about
that is me saying that.
You gotta throw that back into Mordor, like destroy.
It's so much as I remember when I was a Woj, the things we would do and the things we would say, like you could not. I remember we got in trouble because we got that Hooters calendar hanging up. Remember Hooters like sent us all calendars and stuff, and we had that Hooters calendar hanging up in the CP. I think we got in trouble for having that or something. But man, 2004, don't leave your map out. Somebody's going to get a hold of your map, especially before you get it laminated, and something's going to be on there. You're not going to see it till like 6 months later. But anyway. All right. Well, we will wrap it up there. Chat, thanks for following along, and hope you enjoyed it. And for those listening later, because normally I do like an audio like overlay for the beginning of the show. I'm not going to do that because, again, I'm getting up at like 5:30 tomorrow morning to catch this flight to California so that I can then fly an aircraft back to North Carolina the next day. But that's the life that we live. I haven't flown like a month. I've been off for like a month. I gotta study on the ride out tomorrow.
I'll point my laptop at the poster for you.
Well, it's all the flows, man. I just like, I have to like stop and like, okay, this one starts. It's like, as long as I can remember where it starts, I can do it. But like, if you just ask me like, what's the third part of the, I don't know, but it's like, oh, the one that starts with fuel. Oh, okay, fuel. Yeah. But I'll have to run through that again. Anyway, all right. Well, we will shut it down there. Again, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Gordy. And we're definitely gonna do this again. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Thanks, Brian. Gordy, good to see you.
All right, see you.
See you, bud.
All right. All right. Oh, Phil left.
I was like, do I leave? What do I do?
I know. I always forget to like tell people like just hang out.
Hey, it still says live at the top, by the way. Are we broadcasting?
Probably. Hi, everybody.
Hey-o.